Yes, Ahmed.
All
First
right.
of all, thank you to join us here in the second meetup for Jordan User Group, and welcome, Ahmed. Ahmed will guide us today to perfecting XM Cloud for multiple site setup. I will leave the mic to you, Ahmed.
Yeah. Thanks everyone for joining today on a Sunday. Um, so today we're going to talk about XM Cloud and multi-site setup, specifically multilingual, multi-site, multi-domains. Um, so previously in the world, like before XM Cloud, like we've done these things multiple times. But with the XM Cloud, there are might be some challenges into implementing things that used to be more like out of the box from Sitecore SXA. So I'm going to talk about the solutions and the features that we've implemented for this, so that XM Cloud can fit perfectly into a multi-site, multi-language, and multi-domain implementations. So before I jump into this topic today, a quick brief about myself. My name is Ahmed Okour. I'm a Sitecore technical manager from AmericanEnglish.com. Also, prior Sitecore MVP for the last 8 years. I recently been more focused on the XM Cloud implementation, specifically in the last 2 to 3 years. And recently we came across a very large implementation for over 200 sites running on the same instance of Sitecore XM Cloud. And this is where the topic for today's session came from. Like we ran into a few challenges. I just want to share what our solutions were for these challenges. I'm also AI enthusiastic. I share a lot of things, a few open source repos around Sitecore and AI. All right, so let's dive in. So today's agenda, we're going to talk about a few things. If we have more time, we can add more, but I think for today's sessions, these can be enough, hopefully. So the first topic is on-demand ISR for XM Cloud and Next.js, and also XM Cloud multi-site, multi-domain setup. This is one of the biggest topics that I'm going to talk about today, and also XM Cloud site-specific error pages. So first, let's start with the on-demand ISR for XM Cloud pages. Before we dive into like the actual problem, we need to understand what are the rendering strategies that we have for XM Cloud if you're using Next.js as a front-end framework, which is like the majority of people are using currently. So you have things like SSG, SSR, ISR. So quickly going through these. So SSG is like basically static site generation. All of the pages are built at build time. And it provides a super fast like loading time because everything pre-generated as an HTML. It's great for SEO and performance. But the problem, the content updates require a full rebuild every time something changes in the CMS. So it's great for speed, not optimal for CMS sites like Sitecore. The other option is server-side rendering. So this is like the days of MVC and Sitecore. Pages are generated on every request. Everything like always going to be fresh content from the CMS, dynamic, but also slow performance because every request has to go through IIS. It has to execute some code and like bring data from different data sources and then generate the HTML for you. So the biggest problem for this approach is the higher server load. And then you have the last approach, which is incremental static regeneration, ISR, which is like the best of the two worlds. So you still have like pages being generated at build time or at expiry specific time. You still can regenerate pages or on demand or time-based because like when you use ISR, you can configure your pages to be like valid up to like 1 hour. So after 1 hour, it expires and then Next.js will rebuild that page, fetch content from Sitecore and regenerate the entire HTML for you. So you have fast and fresh content at the same time. So in today's topic, we're going to specifically talk about the on-demand ISR. Basically, how can you achieve, let's say like you've published, you made changes on the CMS, you've made a lot of changes on different pages. you have to wait like for 1 hour, 1 day, depends on like the time you've configured for the ISR to be revalidated, or like is there a manual way or an automated way for you to update things once you need them to be updated. So the solution we have came up with two solutions. The first one is manual ISR revalidation. So the screen you see on the right here, this is a PowerShell script. Dialog, basically like right click on a page and say like Vercel revalidate ISR. This is not specifically for Vercel, but it's for any Next.js implementation. The title might be misleading here, but it's really Next.js revalidating for cache. So basically, like whenever you click on a page and you say like, okay, I made changes to this page I published, I don't want to wait like for an hour or like a few hours for it like to force itself to revalidate. I want it now. So you pick the host name, but like let's say sometimes we might have different domains or different apps running for that site. So you pick the languages, you pick the host name, and you pick if you want to also revalidate all of the site descendant items. So let's say you want to refresh the homepage and everything under that, you can do that. And click clear cache. This will call an API that you have on your Next.js app. We're going to go through the code just a little bit just to explain it. And then that will trigger a revalidate on the Next.js app, and you will have a fresh content to serve for your audience. So for every topic I'm sharing today, I already have created a blog. It's very, very detailed blog with all of the code and all of the explanation. If you want to take a pause, you can take a picture or scan the QR code and it will take you to that blog. But let's first do a demo of that dialog, and then I can take you through the code quickly. Right. So on here, you can see that we have few dummy demo sites that we have. So let's say you've made a change to the home page of the site, and you've published. Now your only option is to wait for like whatever revalidation time period you have set up, or you can just right click, go to scripts. I'm sorry. Go to Vercel. You have a few options. I've talked about all of them in the article, but the latest one is this one, the refresh Vercel cache. So as I showed you before, you basically select what are the languages you want to refresh, and then if you have multi-host names, you can select. If you have a preview and you have the public front end, you can select between them, and then you have the option of if you want to process this and that. I'm not going to select this because this might take time. But the idea, you click clear cache, and you can see the script, and it just tells you like, okay, this has been. I missed selecting English. 1 second, sorry. Yeah, all right, I probably have. So these are languages extracted from the item itself based on like whatever languages created for it. It's dynamic. It's not. We're not going to show you all of the languages every time. Basically, like whatever languages selected for this site. And now you can see that the homepage does have an English version. So we just we're going to revalidate ISR for that page. So quickly going to that blog, just going through what is this API that we're calling, because like if you remember, like when I click on something here, like I call an API on my Next.js application. So this is the implementation. This is the blog. We basically expect a URL, and a site name. The secret is just to make sure this API is secured. Nobody can call it. Nobody can come in and just revalidate my entire site, right? So the URL is the relative path you want to revalidate. And then the site name is the site name in Sitecore. This is needed because if you are using multi-site plugin, you want to revalidate the URL in a specific format. But I can skip the whole code here and I just come down to this section. So this is a native Next.js function called response.revalidate. You basically pass the URL and the say revalidate, and that's all you need to do. I am passing something as a structured path, and I will show you an example of how this path is supposed to be. So in Sitecore XM Cloud with Next.js, you have two options of how you construct that structured path. So let's say you have this page about / who are we, right? If you want to revalidate this in Next.js app, you have to send first the language prefix, it's always required, and then the relative path. So it will look like this. But in Sitecore XM Cloud, if you have the multi-site plugin enabled, like as I showed you, I have multi-sites on my instance. The format that you have to send this is as follows. So language prefix, then this is a prefix. It's underscore site underscore then the site name. So in our case, like let's say the site name was site 1, it would look like this. And then after that, the actual relative path of your page. So language prefix, then underscore site underscore your site name, and then the actual relative path. Because this is how Sitecore XM Cloud generates the static file within Next.js, so you have to send it this way. And the rest of the blog just talking about PowerShell scripts. So I'll leave it for anyone who wants to go into the full details. They can just go through that blog. All right, so that's the first topic. If anyone have any question, you can raise your hand, or I have a section towards the end for Q&A. So if you have any question, you can either ask now or later.
Maybe we can ask now for this topic, and then if there is no question, we can move. I have questions.
Yeah.
So Ahmed, regarding this, is it like updating the Edge database? That the script is updating the Edge database, so it will be refreshing the page and the content of the page. I was looking to see the scripts, or in general what this script is doing by PowerShell.
So do you mean the Sitecore Experience Edge database?
Yes.
Okay. So that this is outside Sitecore. So basically, you come to the master database here. You have you have your home page. You go to the pages builder. You add components. Now you have content that needs to be published. You publish that. Now that has made it to the Experience Edge. But if you go to your front end site, and if you're using ISR and you refresh your site, you will not see that change. Why? Yeah. Because already Next.js just cached the entire page for you, so it doesn't keep fetching Sitecore Experience Edge for new content. It just caches everything for a specific period of time that you configure your app for. Usually we recommend hours or days, and then if you want to refresh the cache on the Next.js app, then you have this option of just right click and say, okay, I've made some changes. I don't want to wait for a few hours for it to be shown on my page. I want it to show now.
Okay, so it's refreshing what is in the Next.js app, not the
yeah. Yeah.
Yep, I think that's clear.
So that the manual option, there is a different option I'm going to talk about now. I'm gonna go into depth on it, but there is a blog. I've written the blog, so I will jump into it the next slide. But this is the one that I shared is manual. So obviously, someone has to go and right click, say I want to refresh the cache for that page. There is an option for automated. It's not perfect, but it does exist. So.
Okay, cool. Anyone have any other questions? I think we can move to the next topic. Thank you.
Right. Yeah, so that's the manual approach. The next approach, there is this bonus slide here. You can do it using the experience, the Sitecore Edge webhook. So basically, when Sitecore publish content, you can register a webhook that listens to these events. And basically, like once that publishing event is finished, Sitecore can call your your API, like your custom-made API in your Next.js application. Sitecore will pass all of the information about like the pages that were updated, so you can extract that, then see like, okay, what's the URL for this page, what's the URL for this page, what's the site for this page, and then like you can do the same thing we were doing on the manual approach, but like this way is more automated. So it's like you revalidate the Next.js application using the webhook from Sitecore Edge. It is automatic. You don't have to do manual. You do need to register a webhook in the Sitecore Edge using that Edge admin API. You still have to build that API route in your Next.js application to go through all of the items or pages that have been published and construct your logic to revalidate them in Next.js. One of the potential problems with this approach is if you have a large website, like number of websites or large number of pages specifically, and let's say like you publish a 1,000 page, and once that webhook is triggered, we're passing like 1,000 page to our API, which will try to revalidate these pages. But Sitecore have a rate limit for the experience edge, right? It has like 80 requests per minute, which is not that much, to be honest. So you will immediately go into like errors if you're trying to like rebuild 1,000 page, but you have this rate limit. So a better approach, if you have event message queue system, if you have Azure message queue or any other system, you can basically like extract these 1,000 pages, send them in batches, so that you can overcome the rate limit problem from Sitecore Experience Edge. Again, I've also written a blog about this. You can take a screenshot. Not going through the details, this might be a long blog, but again, this is the other approach if you want to go through it as well. But yeah, this works for some of our clients who don't have a lot of pages. They don't publish that much pages every day. So it might work for like small scale websites. But if you have a very large implementation in XM Cloud, you will see a lot of errors coming from Sitecore Experience Edge that is rate limit reached. Any question?
Can you repeat the limit for the publishing?
It's 80 requests per minute, so it's not that much.
Yeah, I agree.
Not per second, it's per minute. So
yes. Thank you.
yeah, this is why Sitecore says like you have to have ISR or like static site generation in your Next.js, because like if you don't have that, like you're probably gonna run into rate limits.
Yep.
All right. So next, we're going to talk about multi-site, multi-domain implementation in Sitecore XM Cloud. So in this current implementation we're doing, one goal that is like we were previously in the previous days of like Sitecore SXA on XM or XP implementation, you can easily do this. Like there's no custom code needed. So let's say you have a node site, and you have multiple domain languages for your sites. Like all of the pages are the same. It's just like they have different language versions, and you want to have a different domain for these languages. So what you would usually do, you go back to your Sitecore instance, you come to the Sitecore grouping, and you create a new site definition, right? That's how we always been doing it with SXA. You can do that with SXA, with Sitecore XM Cloud. You can only have one site definition per site in XM Cloud. If you do two, like one of them is gonna always be like empty. Sitecore Experience Edge can only recognize one site definition per site. I'm not sure if anyone ran into this problem, but I did, so I wrote a blog about it. So that's the goal. I have some sites will have, the same site node but different languages, and I want them to have different domains. Why? Because the client wants to have that. So it's not something I can just tell the client, hey, like, I can't do it because, Sitecore is limited with this limitation. So this other limitation cannot have multiple site definition, only one site definition per site node. So what happens if I just come here and add it to like the host name section, just add the whole different URLs, right? That can be one approach. But the problem now, for every domain, the default language will always be English, assuming that's your default language on your Next.js configuration. So if you go to the site, like this one here, even though like I'm expecting this to serve like French content, it doesn't, because the default language is English and it will show you English language. You have to prefix it with FR for it to show you French language. So that's why like we have few options. There are like out of the box from Next.js options for this. And I recommend if this works with you, like obviously go with this option 1. It doesn't work with our implementation because we have so many sites. There are some limits. But basically in Next.js, there's a built-in domain configuration with locale. So in your next.config.js file, there is a section for internationalization where you can define all of your locales. And then there's a section, by default, it doesn't exist in Sitecore predefined config, but there is this section called domains where you can define all of your domains for your site and give them the default locale. So this way, like when you go to this domain, Next.js will know this domain, the default locale for it is French. It will show French content. It will ignore the default locale that you have here from Sitecore, which is like the one that reads from the env file. There is a hard limit of 100 local domains. Majority of XM Cloud implementation will not have that much anyway. But if you have more, that's where like the option 2 comes in that I will share. But again, if this works with you, I highly recommend this approach because like there's almost no code that you have to write for this to work. Option 2, like in my case, no, this doesn't work because it has a limit of 100 local. Our implementation is going to have a 200 sites, so that's not going to work. So the second approach is custom middleware solution. I'm not sure if you guys are familiar with the plugin architecture for Sitecore or Next.js, where like you can inject your own plugin middleware and do things before the request goes to your code, basically. So the middleware in Next.js is a software layer that you can write some code every time the request is going through to Vercel or wherever like you're hosting your Next.js app. That middleware code will run, execute. It will execute on every page, regardless if it's cached or not. So it will execute if there is something that you have to handle for that request. In my case, I wanted to say like if someone comes to this site, and this site should have a default locale as a French, I want to add a prefix locale for it so that it shows the French language, for example. Usually people use the middleware for like things like authentication. So like if you have a section in your site that is like has to be authenticated, you check the user session, you check their cookie and make sure if they're logged in or not. And then if they're not, you can show them the login screen or something. But I'm using the middleware here for something else. I'm just detecting of, okay, this domain has to have a different locale. So I'm going to force that to be added. But in order for that, I needed to create a JSON file where like I can define all of my metrics for all of my sites and all of my languages. So this is something, that I call it site languages matrix. You can call it anything you want. But basically here you can define all of your sites. These have to match the site names in Sitecore. You can say, okay, for this site, I'm going to have these languages. Each of these languages can have different domains. Like, like you might have corporate one, and then you have a dev URL for your dev environment. But I'm basically here saying that for this domain, make sure your default locale is or default language is English. For this one is French. And basically in this middleware code that we have written, we basically read everything from here. We check the host, like the current request, what are the parameters that is coming with it. Does it have a prefix language within the URL? If not, we add that and then force it to show the correct language. Does this make sense? Did I lose anyone along the way? Does this problem make sense? Like, because it might be confusing, because if you're coming from the SXA, like XP word, like it might be like, why is Sitecore missing this approach?
It makes sense, like regarding the different, like I was thinking about, I didn't have this problem on my project, but I was thinking about multiple hosting. We can add that as a like pipeline separator. But now when you explain that as a different language, I understood like
yeah.
I was like, oh, okay, what if we need like a multiple language? So
yeah, that's
in this case, Ahmed, you should also like the host name is already predefined, so you have to set them here. So if you have like a new host name, it's not like a dynamic thing. You have to update this file or this code, right?
Yeah, I mean, either way, like you have to do a deployment anyways. Even if you update the domain in Sitecore, like XM Cloud doesn't read things from the it's like you have to build your application every time you add a domain or a site definition or a site host name anyway. So yeah, definitely like there is some manual approach here. That's why I said if option one works well for you, might as well just go with option one. Option two is like for a very edge case where like you have a lot of sites and you have to have this flexibility. But the majority of the implementation of XM Cloud will have less than 100 domains. So option one is fine for this, obviously.
Yep.
But this is for the edge case where like you know what, I need more, so I need something custom. So that's what this solution comes for.
Okay.
Right.
Do you have a blogs about that?
Okay. Yeah. So that's the next slide. I'm not gonna go through the code. It's a very long blog, but the idea is like it's a middleware plugin. I highly recommend, if you're not familiar with that, to go through the blog and just to understand, okay, like I can do these things, like regardless of this problem. But like with Sitecore Next.js middleware, you can actually inject your own software, like code or like specific code that you want to run on every request. And I use this approach so that I can verify, okay, this domain that the user is trying to visit, it doesn't have the language prefix, I'm going to force it to be added. Similar to how the Sitecore Redirect plugin works. So, Sitecore Redirect plugin, like you add redirects in Sitecore XM Cloud, this plugin will read all of these redirects and see if the current request matches that, one of the redirects, it does execute that. So it's a very similar implementation to how the Redirect plugin is implemented, but it just serves a different purpose here. So yeah, there is a blog. I'm not sure if I don't think I have time to go through it, but there's a blog. You can take a screenshot and go there. Next, there is a second part of this problem, which I think the second option might be the only option for you if you have this. So with Sitecore XM Cloud, the sitemap is not generated at runtime. It's actually generated at publish time. So every time there is a site and you publish it, make changes to a page, Sitecore actually update a sitemap file. I'm trying to see if I can remember where Sitecore creates this. Sure. These are auto-generated by Sitecore. There's a folder called sitemap, and it's a literal XML file. It's not something you like make changes to. Like every time you update a page on your site, Sitecore will figure out, oh, there has been some change to your XML, to the sitemap XML. I need to go update that sitemap XML and publish that as well. So that happens behind the scenes with Sitecore XM Cloud. The problem with that sitemap only reads the target hostname to generate the URLs. It doesn't read anything else. If you have multiple domains, it doesn't recognize that. It just assumes every site will have only a single domain for it. So that's where like I also extended Sitecore sitemap implementation so that I can intercept this request and parse through the stored sitemap in Sitecore and change some of the URLs. So if we go through the problem here, Sitecore XM Cloud generates a sitemap with a single domain for all languages. All alternate links use the same domain. Search engines need that domain-specific sitemaps. So the solution is to intercept the sitemap API. There is an existing API from Sitecore. This is an API I did not create. I just kind of like updated to fit my solution here. So basically, I intercept the request. I transform the XML based on the requested domain. So for example, so you might have this part of your sitemap, so it has corporate.a.com/en about us. And then it tells you the alternate link for the French language is like the same domain, but with a prefix, which is still going to work, but it's not the right domain that I want to show it. So after transformation, using that same matrix file that I've had, we can like have multiple domains, where the first one is basically where like you can have this, language-specific domains, and you can have different ones that lives on the same sitemap. Again, this is a problem that not many of XM Cloud implementation might have to deal with, but if you do, there is a solution for that. So again, there is a blog and everything, very full detailed about the approach that we had to go through to fix this problem. There are others who did this differently, but it depends on like what you're trying to do. But some people like actually deploy different Next.js application to Vercel so that they can like fix this problem. But if you have a 200 site, that's not feasible. Like you're not going to deploy a 200 application to Vercel. It's just not feasible. But if you have few sites, you might be able to get away with that. So it depends on like your situation. But in case like you have so many sites and you want a solution that can resolve all of these issues, this is the one for you. Any questions about this one as well?
Ahmed, just a question regarding like someone came from the XP version, XP experience. What is the benefit now to use like if you go to the Sitecore, you can find multiple language within like and the fallback language. So so why that's, for example, not working for the sitemap? The sitemap at the end of the day should be an item, and it should have like a multiple version to support the multiple language, right? So I was surprised, like if I can see, I can see
it's a shared unversion file.
Okay.
It's not even like you don't have the option. I don't know. Sitecore did not think about this. So,
can you check it from the English if they have like a multiple languages here?
No.
They should, because they have a different version. So I was surprised to see like why we have to create this.
It's unversion and a shared file anyway.
I see it's a shared file, so it's impossible to be changed. But yeah.
I don't know if you ask me, but there is the solution that I highlighted does like deal with all of that for you. But again, I wish that I didn't have to like write this, because it should have existed out of the box. But again, I open advocate for all of these, by the way, just to confirm with Sitecore that yeah, for sure this doesn't exist, and yes, and then you're on your own. And I shared all of these solutions with Sitecore, by the way. Just told them like, hey, like just so you know, like I'm doing this. Is this like something you think will not conflict with any?
Consider as a part of the solution. Yes.
I shared all of this with them, and I don't know, hopefully we can include it next time.
Okay.
You're gonna love the next one then, if you think this is weird.
Okay, let's go to that one.
Yeah, all right. Does this make sense for anyone? Like, like if you're still like new to this world, like you might be surprised, like, oh, why doesn't this work out of the box? But I think it's an evolving product. Like Sitecore keeps adding things as specifically to the pages builder, to the system. So like Sitecore does listen more to requests from people. It's a huge like different SaaS product for them. So they're taking it slow. Like maybe they're focusing on more highly requested features. Maybe like not all of the XM Cloud implementations are as complex as this one, so they don't give it that much priority. But yeah, for now, like there is a solution if you want to want more of that. The last topic is about error pages. So again, in the prior like XM XP, every site can have its own 404, 500 page. It's not that hard to configure. You just basically go to the settings of the app, you select these pages, and that's it, right? It just renders whatever like you add on these pages. It will show for anyone who is receiving one of these errors, whether it's 500 or 404. The problem with the Next.js implementation, and this one is more specific to Next.js, so it's not, the blame is not on Sitecore. So Next.js pre-renders error pages at build time. So this is only for error pages, not the other pages. Like previously I talked about like ISR and Next.js renders things either at build time or at runtime, depends on the expiry time of that page. But for error pages, it only gets built at build time, and you only have one version of it in every language for all of the sites. So if you have 5 sites, you're going to have the same error page on a specific language for all of them. So you're going to have to share the branding with all of these sites, and that can be a problem, right? You want to show a branded site-specific error experiences for different sites. You want to show the right logo. You want to show like whatever header and footer you have. Kind of like the Sitecore approach to this is like, hey, just create a generic page for all of the sites and don't show any branding. Just say like, hey, 404, and just take them to the homepage if they need to go home to the homepage. I'm not sure if anyone ran into this issue with XM Cloud yet, but there is actually a documentation in Sitecore that talks about the limitation from Next.js that you can only have one error page type for all sites on every language. It is language specific, so you can have different languages, different error page per language, but all of the sites will have to share the same one. So I have to. Okay. All right. So our solution is basically implement a custom API route called API error pages to dynamically fetch the error page based on the hostname, error type, and language. So we use the site resolver to determine the site context from the hostname, and then Sitecore, they have a service to actually fetch the error page layout rendering content from GraphQL, from the Edge XPS Edge. And then on that API, we can set caching on the Vercel Edge so that I don't have to error pages like rarely changes, right? So I can cache it for 24 hours, and then I don't know why I put it here, probably by mistake. But yeah, so this is how I think that was a reference. But yeah, so basically you have this dynamic approach where you can have an error page per site, and that error page is going to show the same header and footer and logo and everything for that site, and it will get you the right error page. It will cache it for 24 hours because you don't want to keep like hitting experience edge every time someone gets a 404. So it's the best of two worlds, right? I can show quickly of the code of this. That's okay. Should not be that difficult, but the idea is, and I go through all of the problems here. So we create an API route we expect that we give the host name and the error type and the language. You have two options, either 404 or 500. And then using the host name, I extract what is the site for that host name from the site resolver. This is out of the box from Sitecore, Next.js library. And then based on the language, I call this GraphQL errors page service. This is also out of the box from the Next.js library from Sitecore. And I pass all of these details and I get the error page for that site. Then I pass it back to that actual error page, which is like this one. So this is an existing page, always comes with some cloud. So what we did is like we add the use effect. If you're familiar with React, this runs at the beginning of the rendering of the page. So like initially we show a blank page, and then we make a call to that API. We retrieve the actual error page, and then show it to the front-end user. And if you notice, like on the API, I set this cache control. So this is the Vercel edge cache. So this means this API would cache the response based on these parameters that we've sent for 24 hours. So look, this error page will be valid for 24 hours. Then we're not going to keep hitting the GraphQL every time someone goes to the error page. So it's an efficient solution and still like dynamic. It will always show site-specific error pages. Any question?
No.
All right.
Anyone?
All right. So as I said, like I have a QR code and a link for all of these links for all of these blogs. I go into full details about how this can be implemented. Even whenever I update the code for this project, I go back up to these blogs and make sure that the code that I have written is up to date. So these blogs will always be up to date. If there's any problems I've noticed, but yeah. And I think that's the last slide for me today. Any Q&A or a different topic you have to
I think one of the question is like why, if we can use like a static HTML error pages instead of this dynamic thing.
Because some clients might like requires us like to have brand, like they want to show the logo of their site, right? So if the client is okay with just showing a generic page that doesn't have any branding, that's fine. You just keep it as is. Just replace everything with a static content. Don't even like try to like go to GraphQL to begin with. Just like show very static page. But for like that might be okay for 500 error, but like for 404, you might want to show different things. You might want to take them to search page. You might want to you might want to do like an actionable thing for them to redirect them to the the right page, for example. That's right. But yeah, if the client is okay with just static for everything, that's fine. But if in our case, like we couldn't just say brandless content on these error pages.
Okay, thank you. Sam, do you have questions?
Nope, all good from my side. Thank you, Ahmed.
Yep.
Thank you, Ahmed.
Yeah, and check out my blog. There's Sitecore Coding. I keep blogging about everything I found in XM Cloud, specifically focused on XM Cloud. There are other topics that I don't think I have time to fit into today's session, but plenty of good stuff there.
Yeah, I think interesting topic. Like it's covered multiple things related to like a multi-language sites, so it's very beneficial.
Yep.
Okay.
And that's from real challenges. Like it's not theoretical. It's real.
Yeah, I believe it. Yeah, it's challenging. Like it is like a problem without direct solution. So you have to rewrite your code to match with what they already have. Okay. Any questions, concern from anybody? I think we reached the end. And I thank you, Ahmed, very much for very beneficial, like this. Also, your articles looks very powerful. Like I go through one of them, is like full of the information. So thank you for direct us and writing these blogs for the community and
Yeah.
share your knowledge with the Jordan user group. Thank you, and hopefully we will join again
Yeah.
for your next vlogs also.
All right.
Thanks everyone. Have a nice day.
Thank you.
Bye.
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 Thanks all.
Thanks.
Thank you.